Hello, and welcome to October's episode of Let's Talk Oregon. We have a very special episode for you today, which is in some ways a companion episode to our September episode in which we sat down with the incumbent candidate, Jenna Jacobson, who is running for the 50th District Assembly seat. And today, we are sitting down with Rich Johnson, the Republican candidate for that very seat, and we're excited to get to know him and hear his ideas and thoughts for why he is running in this race. So, Rich, welcome to the show today. Thank you for taking the time to come and speak with us and be willing to kind of share with our audience your thoughts and ideas. So can you first kind of tell our audience some of your background and how it is you came to kind of be in this area and want to run for this assembly seat?
Okay, thank you, Mike, for having me. So my folks were both from Wisconsin. I ended up being born in Bad Axe, Michigan. On Friday the 13th. That's just a little thing I like to tell people. But my family returned to Wisconsin, and eventually we settled in the town of Oregon. Went to Brooklyn Elementary from 4th through 6th grade, graduated from Oregon High School, went on to MATC for police science, graduated from there, went to the Police Recruit Academy. From there I did a short stint as a police officer down in Milwaukee, and it just didn't turn out to be exactly what I planned on. So I returned to the Oregon area, and most recently I've done 20 years with TDS Telecom, and the last 5 years I've been at the UW-Madison. While working for TDS and the UW, obviously I've been in this area that whole time. With TDS, I worked in Verona, Middleton, and Monroe, so I covered most of Greene County. Became very well known as a problem solver, sometimes called a perfectionist. I disagree with that. What they meant by a perfectionist and what I thought of it were two different things. Essentially, I just followed the rules and did what we were supposed to do on every install, and that made me so that they were done right.
So you have a good attention to details, what you're saying. Yeah, exactly.
So having lived and worked in this area most of my life, I really feel like I've got an idea of what's going on in the communities and what we need to, some of the things we need to address.
Yeah. And so it sounds like you have a very varied work background, a lot of different experiences, which I imagine you think will be great skills for you if you were to be elected into this assembly seat. Now, you are a New Glarus resident currently, but like as you said, you are kind of an Oregon hometown kid. And when we were corresponding before the show, you said that Oregon has always kind of been your symbolic hometown. So what would you say to those residents of Oregon and Monroe and Brooklyn and all of those towns in our district here? What do you think are the most pressing issues we as voters within this district are facing today? And where should we be focusing our attention?
Well, as I'm talking to people and out doing doors and occasionally at events and other gatherings, a lot of what I'm hearing is concern over the rising costs. I mean, things have gone up here in the last few years to the point where some people are even questioning, and I know some of my neighbors have actually moved to different areas. Their taxes have gone up, gas prices are high. I go to the grocery store and I can't believe I'm just buying for my wife and I. So these are some of the things that I really see concerning a lot of the people. There are things we can do in the assembly, I believe, to mitigate some of these costs. One great thing would be to make daycare more affordable. There are states like Vermont and Arizona or New Mexico, one of those two down in the Southwest, where they've come up with ideas to help supplement the incomes for these daycares and to give credits and make it more affordable. Simple little things like a tax break would be great. We had a huge budget surplus, and recently our legislature passed a biennial this previous term where they spent about $4 billion of that $7.1 billion, and including record spending on schools and healthcare and infrastructure. I could see us doing more of that as well to help alleviate these costs. The only really, I've heard people are also concerned about schools. They want to make sure that their kids are being taught and that it's accountable, what they're learning. but they're also they're concerned about safety. The one thing I don't hear a lot from, and I was kind of surprised because I know in Dane and in Greene County, people are, we see a lot of new solar farms going up. People are really concerned, about energy, but I'm not hearing a lot about the climate. And I don't know if that's a direct result of they've just got more pressing concerns, but that's just some.
Yeah, so you're saying you're hearing a lot of focus on the day-to-day life concerns and how expensive life has gotten, and just in terms of safety in our schools and how we can best protect our students and some of our best resources for sure. Yeah, so I asked your opponent the same question, but we know that Wisconsin has been in the news recently as the Supreme Court has kind of overturned the previous legislative maps and they've been redrawn, which actually has changed this current district as well. I think we moved from the 43rd district now to the 50th. I'm not sure if you can really quote me on that, but how do you see these new lines being drawn in these districts as how is that going to impact this election? What do you think it's going to look like on November 6th, per se? Do you think that's going to have an impact on this election, in the makeup of assembly seats? Any changes, any ideas for that?
Well, yeah, starting with, the 43rd, the only parts of the 43rd that are now part of the 50th would have been the Village of Oregon and the Village of Brooklyn.
Okay.
So, so now it's 5 towns. It's Oregon, Montrose, Primrose, Springdale, Perry in Dane, and then it's all of Greene County. In a way, I see that as a good thing, because now Greene County was actually about, I think it was 4 districts, with the 43rd, the 45th or 6th, the 51st, and the 80th. So over in New Glarus, I was part of the 80th. So it's nice that they consolidated us all into one district. Some of the questions I have, though, is having an understanding of our state's constitution. I see that there was one authority that was given the ability to write the legislative maps, and that would be our legislature. And yet we are operating under maps drawn by our governor. I see that as a bit of a conflict in the the separations of power.
Right.
And so I have a concern for that. Besides that, I believe that when Tony drew these maps, he had an idea of how things may lay out in the legislature following November 6th. I'm not sure if he's going to get that, but I guess it'll remain to be seen.
Yeah, so it may be a different outcome. There may be more balance in that House than we've ever seen before. But so as you said, you have some issues over how that decision came down, and further could see some benefits to, obviously, more of a unifying Greene County voice, and less scattered. So I think it might be a mixed bag, and as you said, time is going to tell as we move forward. So I know that, again, I'm trying to ask some of the same questions that we asked Ms. Jacobson as well, but one of the questions I asked is, from what I've read and seen, there's been a lot of new voter registrations in that 18 to 25-year-old subsection. So for you, as someone who's running to this assembly seat, what are you trying to do to engage some of these new voters? And what advice would you give to an 18 or 19-year-old who's never voted before, how to select the candidate? What would you tell them to look for, and how would you guide them through that process?
Well, I'm currently at the university, so for starters, it's great to see that age group get engaged, because as I go about and doing doors, I've met people that are just disengaged, and you can see, because when they direct you towards homes where people vote, and so many are skipped. In my experiences as I'm doing doors, I try to talk to everyone in the household, and a lot of people have been really great about it, really open, and hey, I had one lady, I felt bad for the kid because she yelling back into the house, hey, get out here, this is somebody who may be representing you, and this is what you, and he wasn't even, I think he was going to be voting age by the time the election came, but at that time he wasn't. So yeah, I like that engagement. I have engaged college Republicans in several of the universities here in Wisconsin. So and I talk with them when asking them what they should be looking for in a candidate. I say your head, your conscience and your heart, but also your wallet. And try and align their values, see if their values align with yours, and do the best you can to figure out who best fits what you want, and vote with your. Ask yourself, am I better off, perhaps, than I was the last 2 years or 4 years ago? Those are sort of questions you should be asking yourself.
That sounds a little bit like Ronald Reagan there. I know that speech well. So we're going to have to take a stop for the break here, and when we come back, we'll be back with Mr. Johnson here with some more questions for him about his assembly seat race. So stay tuned, and we'll see you after the break. Thanks.
Every day, thousands of kids start vaping. And I can't let this happen to my kid. Of course, it's awkward to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping. Hey, bestie, how sketch is me? It's hard to get their attention. Ready? Go. Yes. Look at that. You didn't even turn yours over. So if you want to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping, you got to get it trending.
No, you're doing it wrong.
Let's go.
Can we talk?
Yeah, what's up?
Visit talkaboutvaping.org for tips on when and how to have the vape talk.
Food isn't just fuel to live, it's fuel to grow. My family relied on public assistance to help provide meals for us. These meals fueled my involvement in theater and the arts as a child, which fostered my love for acting. The Feeding America network of food banks helps millions of people put food on the table. When people are fed, futures are nourished. Join the movement to end hunger, and together we can open endless possibilities for people to thrive. Visit feedingamerica.org/actnow.
Welcome back from the break. Again, we are here with Assembly seat candidate Rich Johnson, or the Republican candidate for the 50th District. And we're here talking about all things election and getting to know him better. So Rich, welcome back. Thank you for being here again. You know, as a high school teacher, I often think about like when kids move on from here. And you've said, as we prefaced earlier in the interview, that Oregon High School was like a big stepping stone for you here, and led to other things. So what do you specifically think has led to your experiences in your working world that would make you a great qualified candidate for this position in the Assembly?
Well, I've got a wide background. It all started with the Oregon schools. I mean, Brooklyn Elementary, I had some great teachers down there. Here in Oregon, I had Mr. Kissling was our driver's ed. The guy was great. Roger Pribno with math. We had some great chemistry teachers, Mr. Bauman. I mean, there were, Miss Biddick for English. I mean, and then Mr. Zabel really helped a lot in ag.
Mr. Zabel, the agriculture teacher.
I can still remember a lot of the creed, and that helped. Reciting that. It still didn't quite get me to where I'm totally comfortable with this, obviously, but a little karaoke here and there and singing with some bands helps a little bit too. So even when I was in high school, working at a seed farm, a local seed farm, I was in a supervisory role, and I understand, and we had kids from Madison, we had kids from Stoughton, we had kids from Albany. I worked with all different people, and ultimately you work together and you achieve the common goals. Going forward in life, during those 20 years with TDS, I spent a lot of time, like I said, as a problem solver, figuring out why things are broken and fixing them. I also had supervisory roles during that time where I was, in charge of people and in charge of resources. Leadership, I'm not sure if that's exactly the term. I'm a representative. That's what I want to be. And I want to be the voice of the people as they go to Madison. We don't elect leaders. We elect representatives. We're a constitutional republic with a democratic representation. So, like I said, I think leader's a bit of a strong term. I think we should be leading by example, and we should be representing the voices of the people in the district that we represent.
Right. I think that's a great lead into my next question, too. As you know, I think over the last couple of election cycles, the polarization in this country and in the state, even in the county, has gotten worse, right? We are more encamped in our own beliefs and ideals. We're receiving news sources from different news sources, right? We're not really living in a harmonious way together. So can you give me some examples, some ideas? Like, what would you do to help to bridge that gap and that divide, to, as you said, to work harmoniously together, to lead by example and showing that we have common goals here in the state of Wisconsin and that there's a noble effort in trying to come together on those. So how would you lead by example?
Well, first of all, I mean, if there was one thing I would love to see an end to the negative ads. I mean, they do nothing for anybody, just cutting each other down. I've tried to run a positive campaign. I've tried to talk about issues that concern me and what I believe concern my community, issues that I've picked up along the way while speaking with people in the community. And like I said, I would soon see an end to all the negative ads, but they're out there, and it's something that we can focus on. It's something that we can if more people voice that kind of opinion that they're tired of them, that this is old and we don't need this anymore, that would be great. Ways to work across the aisle. I mean, examples. A lot of times in my work, you got a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds and a lot of different ideas. Examples in my work, some of the guys that I worked with, we didn't always see eye to eye on everything, but when we worked together to get something done, whoever was in the lead on that particular project, we followed their thinking. We did it the way they wanted it done, and we got it done. You put aside your differences, and you come to common goals, and you come to resolutions.
Those are all those solid examples and solid ideas. I know that that polarization is something that weighs heavy on a lot of our viewers' minds, and it weighs heavy on my mind as well. And so I think it's great to hear when candidates want to really break down those barriers. And I know, as a voice of someone who lives in Oregon and someone who's also representing Greene County here, I think it's really important that even though Oregon may be more suburban and Greene County is more rural, I think we have way more that's going to connect us. And I feel like that connection is our cheese, right? So whatever you can do to protect those cheese factories in Greene County, I think, is going to be super, super important. And maybe get an official state cheese out of Greene County or something. That would be a good legislative little across the aisle thing here. So, you know, in doing the research for this interview, you and I talked a little bit, and you kind of identified as some of your main priorities would be to really help support our first responders, help protect our veterans, and further, I'm really interested in your ideas around education. And you said we need to kind of begin to open up more access to education, but especially into those avenues and routes for kind of the technical and trade schools. Why do you value that so much? Why do you think that access is super important? And how would you see that playing out if you were to get to the legislature?
Yeah, I'll start with that, and I'd like to go back to the other two issues as well. So as far as with the access to education, when I went to school here, the only thing that I wasn't really excited about was, or looking back, was that everything was college prep. I know that there had been the stigma from the 50s and 60s where people were tracked towards, mechanics and the technical jobs, but they weren't seen as that then. And then there were the people that they considered college trackable. And so I understand where that came from, but in the meantime, I had a lot of friends that went into the trades, and they didn't start out with a big debt. They got their education as they worked. And I did that myself, going to a technical school. I worked and got my education. So I didn't start out, hundreds of thousands or hundreds of $1,000s in debt in my career. There are schools already. I believe the Monroe School District is working directly hand in hand with Black Hawk Tech, so that the students that are really more technical driven, they're getting credits both for high school and towards their future college, and that's excellent. I mean, we need to open it up. I mean, I've got one person who's talking to me a lot about education, and he sees, well, for example, there was a young lady down in Chicago. She graduated with her PhD at 17 years old. Obviously, she did most of her training online. So for the people, and we learned that through the pandemic too, that some people excel at online and some people, they suffer. And so we need to get a balance there as well. But there's a lot of options, and there's a lot of things that we can look at to track more people. We've got electric shops down in my area, and I'm sure around here too, that are looking for another tech, and they just don't have the people with the skills to do that. A small engine repair place down in New Glarus, they've been looking for an engine tech, and again, so anything we can do to help those have the students that are coming out of these schools ready to get it right into the job force. Sure.
And so you just believe that real robust emphasis on the trades as well will help balance that number of kids going to college and the trades, keep the trades alive and well. As we know, those are all necessities, and first thing you need is a plumber at midnight. You want a plumber, right?
Yeah.
And I understand that completely. Now, you said you wanted to kind of touch back on, like, what are your plans or ideas about, supporting our first responders and also protecting our veterans?
So with the first responders, they need funding, they need training, they need money, but they especially need numbers. In one of our cities, Albany, they two of the ambulance drivers, they're almost afraid to go to the grocery store because they might miss a call. I think, and I know that there's insurance things that are making it hard for, they won't insure somebody under 25 to drive an ambulance. Well, when I was under 25, I was a pretty good driver. So, I mean, maybe there's things we can do at the state level to waive some of these restrictions and get these people help. And maybe we can even co-op like they're doing with the tech schools with our local first responders, the volunteer fire and that, and they can get credits working both ways. Going to the veterans, these people served our country. They served us, and they did it selflessly. And if they hadn't, we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation. A lot of states are doing more than Wisconsin. But all in all, as I look at what they're doing it on a basis of a level of disability on the part of the veterans. Well, for one thing, not all disabilities are physical, and not all veterans are disabled, but yet they still could benefit from some of the programs that are out there, low cost or no cost loans. Obviously, they're paying them back, but at a better rate, and incentives for homes loans that way, and as well as businesses. Anything we can do to help our veterans. I ride for a group called Hogs for Heroes, and we've bought 50 bikes for different wounded veterans of Wisconsin. We're Wisconsin only 501c. I also do things for the Wisconsin Veterans Museum, as well as Fisher House of Wisconsin, which is essentially a Ronald McDonald House for veteran. They attach themselves to veteran hospitals and provide free room and board for patients' families when they have to stay for terms. So those are just some of the things I think we can do, and I mean, whether it be through legislation or finding grants or just finding funding somewhere, let's do that for these people.
I mean, those all sound like really sound ideas, and I think you have a proven record here of some volunteerism that shows that you really do care about these priorities. It's not just service to, to nothing that doesn't actually exist. So. Rich, I know you've got a lot of campaigning to do. I think the election is maybe 20-ish days away at this point.
I think we're right around 20.
20 days away, so I know you got a busy number 20 days ahead of you trying to make sure that you get your word out and get your vote out. And we wish you luck and hope that you have a success. And thank you for coming and taking the time for us. And our viewers, if you're interested in more in Rich Johnson, be sure to just Google his name, Rich Johnson for State Assembly, and you'll get lots of different websites and Facebook pages and other things that you can kind of follow and follow along and to see those updates. And remember, most importantly, no matter which side of the aisle you sit on or refuse to sit on, exercising your constitutional vote is super, super important, and you need to be involved to make your voice heard. So be sure to look up your polling locations. Remember, here in the town and village of Oregon, those have kind of shifted a little bit since our last big presidential election. So make sure to check where your ward is and where you vote. And further, remember, you can also register at the polls still in Wisconsin on the same day. And make sure you bring some mail in which indicates your current address, like a utility bill, and also make sure you have your driver's license, as you'll need that to vote as well. So from us here at Oregon Media, thank you for watching, and we'll see you after the election. Thanks.